Gideon, you also started in film. You made 2 films, but your success, the biggest success that you've had, came out of interestingly a series in Israel that is being adapted now all over the world.
Which he directed everything.
Yeah, which you directed as well, and now it's being adapted all over the world. So, but was it never a case of, and which is what I want to understand. I mean, of course, TV is a lot more prestigious right now, but at the time when you were doing it, was it ever something for you that I'm sacrificing and going to television, or I'm sort of...
No, not really. I was never a snob about television. I grew up on television, so it's true that when series like Sopranos and Oz came out, it allowed for deeper exploration of characters on television and all of that. But I was just happy to tell a story, honestly. The reason I moved to LA to begin with to study at the AFI was because I couldn't break into the industry in Israel. And after the 2 features, I did it the other way. After doing 2 features in Hollywood, I finally got a break in Israel. So I could tell my story on television there.
Someone mentioned over here the reach that television offers. I actually have a theory. I know there's this.
Someone network mentioned it.
Well, of course, the network mentioned it. Now, I actually want to talk about that as well, because I have a theory. There's this film producer. There's a television producer called Ekta Kapoor here. Critics have issues with her, but I genuinely believe what she's done. Before Ekta Kapoor came to television, the Indian woman did not have the remote control. The Indian woman was a homemaker, and the remote was controlled by the man of the house, for watching news and cricket matches. When Ekta Kapoor serials came on and had women as the protagonists, the remote actually traveled back to the women again, which sort of gave them... It's interesting, the content of we're not talking about the content of what her shows were, but it gave confidence to the conditioned Indian woman to sort of take the remote control in her hands. So somewhere it empowered women across India. And I genuinely believe that. And the fact is, I think our generation is a lot more liberal, in India at least, because of Friends. I think Friends has done so much for opening and broadening the minds of young children who've been brought up on its diet. And I think a lot of that is happening. So is television important because it probably genuinely has the potential of changing the environment around you versus a film? I mean, a film, of course, can have a impact, but with the reach the television offers, the number of eyeballs it can get, can it actually change the world?
Yeah, if I may answer that. I think first let me begin by adding to what you just said about the impact that my friend Ekta Kapoor has had on our country. I think, and let me not use data that I can manufacture from TAM or BARC or whatever. Let me tell you a piece of academic work that has been done outside of this country by 2 scholars who work for the University of Chicago. And these 2 studies available on Google, so you can just type University of Chicago study on Indian television, it will show up. So what these 2 professors did was they went to rural India and they did some serious research work in the early years of satellite television, which is when the Ekta shows on Star Plus were at their prime, right, at their peak. She was making roughly 47 of the top 50 shows on TV. And this is exactly what was happening in all those households. So there were women who were taking charge of their destiny for the first time. So here were women who were reporting that as they started watching these shows over a period of time, their say in the most important decisions that got taken at home, whether, which groom was the daughter in the house going to get married to? What is the right age for marriage? Till what point should the girl study? All of those questions were questions on which she had been voiceless, and she found her voice because somewhere that change was triggered by the shows that we were showing and that Ekta was making for us. I think, a lot of it, the commentary on television, and I'm sure I'm going to raise some hackles here when I say this, has been snobbish and elitist. I think, this is people who have the privilege of being exposed to the finest education in this country, people who have had the benefit of actually living with television for 30 years and more, and people who have the great opportunity of following the work that people like the 2 gentlemen here on my right have done, that exposes you to a higher consciousness. For a large part of our country, we're talking to Bharat and not to India. And for most of them, their experiences with television are as recent as the last 5 to 10 years. And therefore, in those households is where the real battle for mind space and for control of destiny is happening. And that's where storytellers like Ekta, like the people who made Diyar Bati Hum, have made a real telling difference to shaping the destiny of our country. I think there's been a lot of comment on Nagin and Brahma Rakshas, and neither of those shows I've had anything to do with, and they're not on my network. But I'd like to say this, I don't honestly. I think nobody's night's sleep has been hit more than mine with the enormous success that these shows have had. But I want to say this: if you want to go and tell a fantasy story, right, which is around snakes and the magical powers that snakes have, there's no problem with that, right? I mean, in the West, there's Twilight, and for heaven's sake, there's Game of Thrones. And there is a huge dimension on that all of us watch, which is totally fine. So I think I do have a problem with a lot of regressive content that happens. But that doesn't happen on TV screens alone. That happens on our news channels. That happens on a lot of the movies that get made in this country, and in Hindi and in various other languages. So I think a lot of this discourse should really move away from medium to the specifics of stories. And I think in recognizing that and in understanding the power of what has been unleashed in this country, because this is something that is truly unique to our country and where we are today. Because let's face it, where literacy levels are in our country, right, there is no other way of shaping public consciousness which is more powerful than the reach of television. And when it is either a Nikhil Advani or an Amir Khan or a Ramesh Sippy before that, when I was growing up, right, Ramesh Sippy made Bunyad. These are people who are really making a very, very big contribution in changing the discourse.
Cary, the impact of True Detective. Now again, I don't think Matthew McConaughey got his Oscar for Dallas Buyers Club.
Other than the memes that my agent would send me every now and then.
You didn't see the Joel McHale skit?
Which one?
Joel McHale one.
Which one was that
Oh,
one?
it's so
Is that the
funny. I'll
guy?
show you afterwards.
Is that like where he's with the kids, like the AT&T commercial?
Yeah.
That one was good. So that was fun, but I mean, yeah, I don't know.
See, you are, the reason I'm asking again is now you have had a lot of films in development ever since Beast of No Nation. But the project, if I'm not wrong, the project that you've chosen to do next again is a TV show with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, Maniac. So you're going back to television. So is it because of the impact that the show had? What is the reason for that?
I just really wanted to work with Emma and Jonah, so we just kind of thought maybe we should do a show. It all started like one night. I was having a drink with Emma, and I said, I really want to do a show with you. And then she said, I always want to do one with Jonah. So then we went to Jonah's house and had some wine, and then we all agreed to do a show. So,
But why the show versus a film? That's the question.
oh, I think because we started talking about a show and we just kind of stuck with it.
Gideon, because we are talking about reach and impact, now Homeland season 1, which is, again, we also spoken about character. Homeland in season 1 wasn't just a show about a terror attack or a terrorist who's people, a prisoner of war in a sense, who's been let loose. It was a show about two broken people. It was a show about a PTSD-ridden POW and a bipolar agent. And as it's progressed, it's obviously just turned into a conventional thriller again. But did you see, at least in the initial seasons when we were seeing Brody's story, did you see people having, did PTSD or bipolar disorder, did that come into the conversation according to you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the idea of these people coming back came from an extensive research I did with former prisoners of war. There are about 1,200 of them living in Israel, and I met many of them and their families and their wives and their children, the doctors they take care of, and the psychiatrists. So all that research came into prisoners of war, and then that found its way into Brody's damage. Cary's bipolar disorder, and I'm allowing myself to say it was a brilliant thing because it didn't come from me, but that allowed for a kind of a very special viewing experience because you had a very unreliable narrator. You had no idea if she thinks Brody is a terrorist because she's right or because she's off her meds. And she's the lead of the show, which was very special, I thought. So yeah, the PTSD came from a lot of research, and people who come back from that horrific experience from captivity don't really get over it, from what I've learned. So I wanted to convey that.